My name is Wendy Hine, and I work for Disability Rights Wisconsin. And I am here to talk with you about the election. But I'm not the only one here to talk to you. I'm here with Nancy Heltemis and Savannah Hopitas. And we're all going to talk to you about voting today. And I think it's super timely because there's something big coming up in just a couple weeks. Pretty sure everybody is very well aware, a big election, and I think there's a lot of pressure. So what we talk about though, I work, all of my work at Disability Rights Wisconsin is with the Wisconsin Disability Vote Coalition. We're funded through the Help America Vote Act. And that means that we're totally nonpartisan. So I'm not here to talk to you about who you should vote for or who you shouldn't. We work with, we're a project with the Board for People with Developmental Disabilities and DRW, but then also we work with agencies all around the state and groups and individuals who represent different groups. And we work toward full participation in the whole process of elections. So what we're really looking at are all the logistics of people being able to vote. And that's really our focus, not who or what to vote for. So we're going to talk about voting being important. And in order to do that, I'm going to have Savannah come up and talk with me and Nancy. So we're gonna do this in kind of a question and answer format. And I think some new folks came in, but I'm Wendy Hine. I'm with Disability Rights Wisconsin, and this is Savannah Hopitas, and she's gonna talk to you about her voting experience. So
Yeah,
um,
I am a nominee.
I will start by asking you, Savannah, can you tell everyone here when you started voting?
Okay. Hi, my name is my name is Savannah. I started voting in 2018. In 2018, after I turned 18 years old.
Wait, can I ask you a question? Yeah.
Did you go to your voting or polling place with someone to vote, or did you go by yourself?
Yes, my mom took me. She did show me how to use the voting booth and how to read the ballot and mark how I wanted to vote for.
And Savannah, how did you learn about who you wanted to vote for before the elections?
Yes. For the important races, like our governor and the co-state elected officials and the president, that sometimes there would only be one name on the ballot. For a ways, and I'll just choose those candidates.
Those would usually be, I'm sure you've seen them if you've voted uncontested local seats or for judges and alderpersons and things like that, etc.
Savannah, what was it like voting during COVID?
My mom and I voted Evans, Evans, and see, we filled out the Evans and see ballot at home and took it to at um, to the ballot box outside our local library.
Did you feel like that was a safe way to vote?
Yes.
There's Savannah up there putting her ballot in the ballot box. Oh, and there's my big head. So there she is. I'm sure a lot of you remember the challenges of voting during that election. Things were pretty confusing. Savannah, now that we're back to voting in person, or you can be, it's safer. Do you and your mom go to the polling place together?
We did, we went we went to use the inaccessible voting machine sometimes. We had to show poll workers how to use it. Mother?
We found that our polling place had changed and the new one had a very dangerous parking lot.
My mom and I talked about it with a TV station in Madison when we were there for Disparity Equity Day. When?
So, and hopefully we'll play that clip at the end. It wasn't working too great for us, but we're hoping to play that for you at the end. So Savannah, you mentioned that you talked about it with a TV station. Can you tell us about how you advocate for voting rights?
I am a partner in policy making with Chad. I am a youth leadership and graduate. I go to Disability Equity Day. I am a person at the conference.
Yeah. Savannah, you recently got married to Henry this past summer. Woo! Congratulations. So did you have to change your voting information then so that you could vote now that you're married?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Don't interrupt there. Yes, I had to change my name to my marriage name and new address. I got my postcard in the mail a few weeks ago. I am all set to go. Mother?
Today is the first day of early voting in person in many places in Wisconsin, and we live in Milwaukee. So when we get back tomorrow to Milwaukee, what are we gonna do?
Vote early.
Vote early.
Awesome. Thank you, Savannah, for sharing your story. Thank you, Nancy. Does anyone have any questions for Savannah?
Savannah, I'm curious. How do you decide who to vote for? And what happens if your husband or your mom want you to vote for one person? What do you do?
I met Henry at. Okay. Oh,
You pick your candidate.
my candidates are. I'm gonna vote for.
Not who you vote for, but how? How do you decide?
I decide I'm gonna vote for President Harris.
The other candidate, or your husband wants you to vote for someone different, what do you think?
Yes, it does, really.
Your own decision?
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
The first time that you applied to vote, how was that process as a first time voter myself?
I can pull that. I can tell you. It's online for one thing. You can get an online application to submit your information for voting. I know this because my other daughter just turned of age to vote. So she did her information online, and I'm sure you probably have that website at the end or
Yep,
something
I
like
do.
that. Yeah, but Wendy's going to tell you all about that.
And Nancy
gonna
and I
tell you all
have
about it.
daughters the same age,
Yes.
so her younger daughter and my oldest are the same age,
Yeah.
so new voters.
And you can, and actually, I believe you can register to vote here today, right?
The online registration is closed
Okay.
now
Oh, yeah.
until the election, but you can vote, you can register in person, and in Wisconsin, you can register even on election day at your polling place. So
Yes,
that's
yes.
a really cool thing about Wisconsin.
So, and if you are doing early in-person voting, you should be able to go and register right that day and then go right ahead and vote.
It's not, it sounds more intimidating than it is. And I can talk to you about it too afterwards, but we will cover a little bit of that. So, there's been a lot of talk about eligible voters. And in Wisconsin, in order to be an eligible voter, you have to be a US citizen and you have to be an adult US citizen. That means 18 years old or older before election day. You have to have lived in Wisconsin for 28 days prior. This is really really a lot of like college students struggle with this because they're confused. Like they sort of live at home and they sort of live at the dorm, but it's 28 days is the rule. You have to have lived there 28 days. You can't be serving a parole or you can't be like on paper in order to vote, and you can't have had a judge say that you're not competent to vote. So we'll touch on that a little bit more later. But that can happen during a guardianship proceeding. So during guardianship, and yes.
They said if someone is in jail and they haven't been sentenced yet, that they can vote.
I don't know the answer to that, but I will find out for you. I'll find out. Stop by the Disability Vote Coalition table and I'll find out the answer. I don't know the answer to that. So, that's a good question. If you have a guardian in Wisconsin, a lot of times people think, oh, I have a guardian, I can't vote. That's not necessarily true. Actually, the default setting for when you have a guardian is that people do keep their voting rights. However, there's a list of different rights on the guardianship document, and the judge can go through and determine each of those rights and if that person has competence for those things. One of those items is voting. So every guardianship is different in this way. And so people should need to check their guardianship documents if they're not sure. I do have at the Disability Vote Coalition table documents that are helpful with information about guardianship and voting. So stop by if that's a specific question that you have. So we talked about a little bit, we touched on registering to vote. Registering is the voter language for signing up to vote. And you can register in person or at your polling place. Right now, prior to October 16th, you could do it online. And for future elections, you can do it online. But once we get into this window of time, just a couple weeks before the election, then the ability to register online closes and you can't do that anymore. But again, you can still register even on election day at your polling place in Wisconsin. If people live in a care facility, oftentimes there are something called special voting deputies that will come to the care facility and they can handle registration. What will you need to register? You'll need a Wisconsin driver's license or ID card, or a proof of residence document. So when you're registering to vote, you need something that shows that you live where you say you live, that you're voting at the place where you say you live. And again, those are the dates. You can register still until election day. Just 1 minute.
I went to a voting rally, and I found out too that okay, in Milwaukee we got a lot of homeless people, and it's a way that they can vote too.
Thank you for bringing that up. So what Willie just said is that if people are experiencing homelessness, that they want to register to vote, there is a way for them to do that. So that shouldn't be something that keeps people from voting. And again, I'm going to share a hotline number with you later. You could have them give us a call and we're happy to walk them through that process. Now we're going to talk about going to vote, and you got to see some pictures of Savannah going to vote before, the different ways that she's gone to vote. So voting in person is certainly an option. Nancy brought up that you can go early to vote. It looks a little different in every municipality, how it's handled. Some of the bigger cities have voting centers. Some you go to the municipal clerk's office. I can look that up for you if you come to my voting table, or you can look it up on your devices. I'm going to share a website with you in just a little bit. We always suggest that you check your polling place. A lot of polling places change all the time, especially this year because some of the legislative maps change, and so that affects where people vote. But we always suggest that you check your polling place. I've lived in my house 12 years and I voted at the same place all 12 years. And I still check my polling place every time because I don't really schedule my life in a way that I could, like, it would really be a cramp in my day if I got to my polling place and had to go find a new one. But also I drive myself. So it's not as big of a deal for me as it might be for someone who's finding a ride or walking or something like that. Do you have something?
I was going to mention now that Savannah has gotten married and moved into her own house, and it's only 7 blocks from my house. We have different polling places and we're only 7 blocks apart. So that's how tight it is in certain districts. So she goes to one polling place and I go to another polling place.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. All right, so we also suggest that you preview your ballot. You can do that on My Vote, which I'm going to show you that website later. That way, you know, I'm pretty sure you all know there's a presidential race on this ballot, but a lot of cities, school districts have local elections a lot of those elections are nonpartisan, which means you can't just say, well, I vote this way or I vote that way. Previewing your ballot gives you a chance to have no surprises when you open up your ballot, and you can make a plan to vote for those. Double check your registration, make sure you're registered. We're going to talk about curbside voting in just a minute, and I'll tell you what that is. And then we suggest that you really plan ahead with transportation if you need to make a plan. There are all these, we have a resource on our website for finding transportation, but a lot of them require that you call a few days ahead to make a plan. In Wisconsin, you're required to show photo ID when you go vote. This is something that you can only get a photo ID. Well, you can only get the Wisconsin driver's license or state ID at the DMV. So that requires another trip for folks who might need transportation. One interesting thing of note is that if you go to the DMV and get your ID, and then when you come home, it used to be that you came home with a brand new ID, but it's not like that anymore. I think it might be because of the real ID or something, but now what happens is you come home with that receipt that's up in the corner. You can see there's like a little collage of 3 receipts up there, and it has a little picture and a little barcode. And that receipt serves as your ID until until your ID comes in the mail. And that receipt can actually be used as a voter ID. So if your ID doesn't come in time for the election, that's okay. You can use that receipt. Okay, yep, it's
State
free.
IDs are free. Yep.
But I think they try to charge you and you have to like use the language, I need a voter ID. Is that right? Did everyone hear that? Okay. That's great information. Thank you.
College student use their college ID to vote.
Well, it depends. Some
It depends because they're
of them
down there.
will let you use it. It depends on what's on the ID. They're hit and miss. So that's a little bit tricky for students. Do you have a question?
I have a question. So my uncle he's got developmental delays, but he is pretty knowledgeable in politics, but he struggles with reading. So
It's okay for him. Oh,
so how would somebody be advocate for him if he struggles to read?
if someone has reading difficulty, but is a voter, they can do a few things. They can use the accessible voting machine, and then it can read their ballot to them with the headphones. And then it can even read the ballot back to you. like read what you chose back to you. The other thing that someone can do is they can bring someone that they trust with them to help them at the polling place.
I see. But, thank you.
Thank you. So that was the perfect question to lead us into your rights as a voter with a disability. Every voter in the US has the right to vote privately and independently. And that's kind of like your umbrella right as a voter. And all these other rights really are rights that that right doesn't go away because you have a disability. Like people will often say like, well, they just want to bring someone to help them or something like that. Well, they have the right to vote privately and independently. If someone wants someone to help them, that's their choice. But so that's sort of your umbrella right. So you have the right to access the polling place, to get into the polling place, whatever that means for you, and whatever that requires. You have the right to use the accessible voting machine. Every polling place should have an accessible voting machine. And every voter has the right to use it. You don't have to, nobody should be asking you questions about why you need to use it. Actually, we have an accessible voting machine here today in the mock polling place. If you'd like to try it, I really suggest that you do. You can have it read your ballot to you. It's a really, really great way for voters to vote. Every voter has the right to ask for accommodations, such as a chair to sit in, or a signature guide, or assistance stating your name and address if you're a voter who is non-speaking. The first thing they ask you when you walk into the polling place is state your name and address. It's okay to like hand them your ID and they state your name and address as an accommodation. It's okay for your spouse or your friend or somebody to state it for you. That's just a disability accommodation, and that's okay. You have the right to assistance marking your ballot. And again, that's not a right that you have just as a voter with a disability. That's a right that every voter has. The person helping you mark your ballot does need to fill out a little section on the ballot, but that's allowed. And you just can't have your employer or your union representative help you because obviously, correct, exactly, conflict of interest. So this talks about the accessible voting machine. In this picture, it's set up, and in our mock polling place, it's set up pretty open. And in fact, in this picture, that was at an event at Independence First. There's a group of people standing behind her. Obviously, you wouldn't want it set up like that for an election because remember, privately and independently. But this was to display the machine. So anyone can use the accessible voting machine, not just, again, they shouldn't be asking you why you want to use it. Anyone can use it. And as Nancy and Savannah mentioned, you want it to be working properly. And if it's not, we would ask that you either call the Wisconsin Election Commission or call us, and I'm going to share those numbers with you. You have the right to curbside voting if you can't get into your polling place because of a disability. I think people are aware of this because of COVID, but the right to a curbside voting for voters with disabilities existed long before COVID. This is a disability accommodation, so not every voter can just pull up and honk their horn and do curbside voting, but voters with a disability do have that right. You can file a complaint if you feel your rights have been violated. If you make a mistake on your ballot, it's okay. You can ask for another one. It's no problem. There's a little bit of a process, like they're going to want to take that ballot back from you because they have to make sure that they know where every ballot goes, but it's not a big deal to them and you shouldn't feel embarrassed. You can bring a note sheet along. Remember I told you to check what was going to be on your ballot earlier? Well, then you can actually make yourself a note sheet. And that's especially helpful for those local elections. Like if there's 3 school board seats and it's like hard to remember the people's names or whatever. I think you probably all know who you want to vote for president, but you probably don't need a note sheet for that, but you might for school board. So The other thing that I wanted to bring up, and I think that this was really highlighted when Savannah talked to you. No one should tell you who or what to vote for. And that actually also applies to folks who have a guardianship. If you're a person with a guardian who votes, your guardian can't even tell you who or what to vote for. Oh, thank you. So curbside voting, I mentioned to you, the curbside process in Wisconsin, it varies from municipality to municipality. Some places you pull up and you call a number. Some places have a doorbell. Some places say they're just watching and they'll know you're there. It's different every place. Our strong suggestion would be that if you're a voter who knows you're going to use curbside voting, that you call your municipal clerk in the next week or two. Well, I guess it's 2 weeks away. So, that you call your municipal clerk soon and just say, hey, I'm a voter in your municipality. I'm going to be curbside voting. Could you tell me how I should do that? And they should be able to tell you the plan. Voting absentee, it's getting pretty tight. So if you have your absentee ballot at home, I would say fill it out ASAP and get it back. And for future elections, if you request an absentee ballot, do it as soon as you can. The one thing to be really mindful of, if you're one of those people who does have an absentee ballot sitting on the kitchen table at home, when you fill it out, make sure that your witness signs it and puts their address. That's what that little picture there is. They can still put their address. Yep. That's okay. You mean if it's the same address as yours? Yes. So they still sign it and put their address, even though it's the same as yours. That's a good question, because a lot of people have a witness who is in their own family.
If you were to change an address, how long does it take to change it on the records?
Okay, go for it, Nancy.
Whoa. Okay. We just did this with Savannah. And she had to go in and get her new ID. And at the same time, they had people outside the DMV that were registering people to vote. So we were able to right there on their computers change her address so that she could get her new postcard. You can change your address, I believe, online, because that's all it was. It's just an online form to change your address.
Thanks. Oh,
Also mentioning that on the voting sheet, they do have Spanish.
oh, yes. There is Spanish available as well, although I think only in 2 municipalities in Wisconsin. So not everywhere in Wisconsin is required to have a Spanish ballot, I believe. Maybe there are 3, but it's not everywhere. Only, I know. So I'm pretty sure I'll double, you're making me make a list now. Okay. So the Wisconsin Election Commission suggests that, or the deadline is October 31st. So that's easy to remember, Halloween, to request your absentee ballot. But I would say if you sit down and look at a calendar, you're going to realize that that's really not enough time for them to, even if they send you that absentee ballot the next day and then you fill it out immediately. And I mean, maybe, but it just feels pretty tight to me. I would say maybe take advantage of other voting options, even this late in the process. And if you have an absentee ballot at home, return it as soon as possible. You can still return it on election day by 8 p.m. So, but the sooner the better. Some municipalities have drop boxes. Yeah, mine doesn't. My drop box is all wrapped up in plastic, but Some do. Some have drop boxes, and that's a good option for folks. Early voting starts today, 22nd. And so that's a great option for folks. So this is a tricky sort of thing for folks right now. If you have an absentee ballot in Wisconsin, every voter is required to either mail their own ballot or return the ballot themselves. So like, if I'm a voter and I'm doing an absentee ballot and I'm dropping it in a drop box or taking it to my municipal clerk, I can only take my own ballot and return it. I can't take my daughter's, even though she lives in the same house as me. I can't take Nancy's. However, if I'm bringing a ballot back for someone who has a disability, that's a disability accommodation, and I can do that. You can return a ballot for a voter who has a disability. You cannot for a voter who doesn't. So the one thing that I'm going to tell you though, is that if you return a ballot for someone else, someone who has a disability, you're probably going to get asked, why are you returning someone else's ballot? And you should expect to answer, I'm returning it for someone who has a disability. You shouldn't have to go into a diagnosis thing. You shouldn't have to have a doctor's note. I mean, there's nothing, all you have to say is, I'm returning it for someone who has a disability. And you can drop it in the drop box. Yep. So she asked about the timing for early voting, and every municipality has different hours, different locations. So you have to look it up for your local area. We have a question back here.
Do you have any suggestions if somebody runs into problems at the poll? So they bring in the envelope and then they're denied?
So I believe this happened actually in the August election, that a couple of voters were denied returning the ballot for a voter with a disability. They were able to call the Wisconsin election. They called, I believe, us, and then we were able to contact the Wisconsin Election Commission, and we were able to sort it out for them. My hope is that because it happened in that election, it won't in this. But I think we can all, but I think it's might be more realistic to think it might. And so I guess my suggestion would be, of course, if you talk to the municipal clerk right there, at that moment, that the best case scenario would be that the person that it's one poll worker who's misinformed and they fix it. If not, I will be sharing our number and the number for the Wisconsin Election Commission, and we would certainly try to help you resolve that, because it's not legal. So, and we would want to resolve that. So I wish that I could say that we could prevent it on the front end completely, but I'm not sure that we can, especially with this election. So what's going to be on this ballot? Some of you already voted, you told me. We know that the president is going to be on there, the Senate and the House. And then the Wisconsin, a lot of us know our Wisconsin state and assembly reps. A lot of you, I think, interact with them in your communities. They're making decisions right here in Wisconsin. They're on the ballot. And then a lot of municipalities have local elections like town boards, things like that. A ton of school districts, I think over 100 school districts have referenda on them. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about are these, we had these on our last election, different ones. We're having constitutional amendment on this election. And what a constitutional amendment means is that they want to make us change the state constitution. and the one on the ballot on November 5th. So the thing about these is, and the thing about referendums is it's always this legal language. And so legal language means that most of the rest of us read it and go, what? I don't know what that means. I sometimes wonder if attorneys read it and they think, what? I don't know what that means, but somebody must understand it. So basically this constitutional amendment is an amendment that wants to change one word in the Constitution. So it wants to change it to say right now it says every US citizen or every US citizen is able to vote, and they want to change it to say only US citizens have the right to vote. It's a super subtle change. It's a super subtle change. Every to only. So if you think of other situations where you're saying, like, everybody in the class of students in first grade gets to go to the park, and then you say only the class of students in first grade gets to go to the park, there's a slight difference. And right now, a yes vote means that you want to change that wording. A no vote means that you don't want to change the Constitution. You say the Constitution is fine. Right now, we don't really, there's not like a direct thing that will change because this wording changes, but there's a lot of possible changes, and no one really knows what those are. So you have to decide how comfortable you are with that. So now I'm going to share some resources with you. I think I'm running out of time here. How can you be an informed voter? Those 3 websites in the middle are nonpartisan websites: Vote 411, Ballotpedia, and Wisconsin Vote. They're great websites. That top website, myvote.wi.gov, that's where you can check all those things that I mentioned to you before. And then the bottom is us. You can follow our organization, our coalition. And then in the middle here is the Disability Rights Wisconsin Voter Hotline. Please call us if you have any obstacles to voting, if you have questions, if you experience something, if somebody won't let you return a ballot, we want to help you. That's what we do. We want to help you. And then this is the number for the Wisconsin Election Commission. We have found them to be so helpful and so invested in helping people vote. So they are really, really helpful. And in fact, they're out there at the mock polling place. So check them out. And that's it. That's all I got for you. So thank you. Happy voting. And I have my list of questions for you. So I'm going to find out. Oh, we do? I thought I was 15 minutes over. Oh, okay. So are there questions, anyone? Yes. I have it. I sent it to the oh. I thought I sent it to the to Phil, but I don't know where it went. Yes.
Just for future reference, I wonder when there's a voting presentation such as this, when it comes to acceptable IDs, it might be helpful to include, in case you would have some tribal people, the use of tribal IDs.
It was
Oh,
on
was
there.
it?
It was in the In the bottom
Okay.
left corner. Yep. I was going to
Thank
mention
you.
that too. It was there. Yep.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I should have mentioned it out loud, though. I should have mentioned it out loud, though. Sorry about that. Also, I did forget to mention that if you have an expired ID and it expired since the last election, you can actually still use that as your photo ID as long as your registration is up to date. So like if you haven't moved, but you have this expired ID that's been expired, if it expired since the last election, you can still use it. So thank you. That's true. That's true. Try to go back to those info pages. There we go. I started really racing toward the end because I thought that the time was up. So then could you tell when I like started racing? And then I was like, and now Nancy tells me I have more time. So, any other questions?
I used to get absentee vote. So the last election, I waited, and it never did come. And so what I did, I went into the poll and voted in. So
now what will you do this time?
probably
Did you
go
already get the
do it.
absentee?
No,
No.
because I didn't never sign.
Oh, okay.
But so what I'll do, I'm going to early voting.
Okay. So she said that she's always gotten the absentee ones, but that for some reason it didn't come the one time, and so she had to go in person and vote. And so I think so. There's a couple things. I think when you sign up for an absentee ballot, you have the option to choose a full year of ballots, or you have the option to choose just the next election. And so when that full year runs out, then you have to re-sign up. If you're a voter with a disability who will always need to be who will always need to get an absentee ballot because of your disability or your age. And I think the Wisconsin statute says disability, age, or infirmity. But anyway, you're a person who will always need an absentee ballot. You can sign up as an indefinitely confined voter, and then you don't have to renew it every year. But as soon as you get an absentee ballot and don't vote, then you stop getting them. That like unsigns you up. So also, sometimes weird things happen with voter rolls. Like, I don't really understand all like the purge, or I don't even know. But it seems like sometimes people's things just need to be redone. I don't know why. So again, that's why I'm always like, oh, keep checking, check. So I mean, I don't think it's like some suspicious, I don't know. I don't think, I'm not really I'm not big into that, like all the conspiracy stuff, but I just think sometimes organizationally it happens. So, yeah, I don't know. Oh, yes. So a lot of people think that they should, a lot of people would like to call to request their absentee ballot, but they can't. You have to do it in writing or online, right? Yeah, so anyone have any questions for Savannah or Nancy? All right, then I think we'll turn you loose early and send you over to the mock polling place, please.
And remember, if you can vote early, this is going to be one of the most voted on elections that we're probably ever going to see historically in quite some time. So if you can vote early, you might want to.